So we have people out here all the time like, oh, you're projecting. It's like, maybe, but also you're still being a twat. Like
Totally. Totally. Absolutely. And I think there's a conflation between perception and projection.
ooh, say more.
Well, I think that a lot of times what we experience or what we're labeling as projection is perception. Unclear perception, not necessarily like mature perception, right?
Welcome to the Mystical Aunties podcast, everybody. I'm Elizabeth D'Alto.
And I'm Elisha Tischel.
The tagline for this show is, "For the love of all things sacred." So how are we showing that love? In a world where there aren't just an abundance of healers and spiritual practitioners, but also spiritual influencers, we wanted to team up to offer seasoned and mature insight, wisdom, and exploration on a range of topics, from healing, human behavior, somatics, and plant medicine, to communication, relationships, sexuality, spirituality, and more. With decades of experience in our respective fields, and with some trusted friends we consider the Council of Mystical Aunties, you're invited to evolve with us, go deep with us, and laugh hysterically with us, because true mystics know if you can't find the humor in all this, you're missing the best part. Let's get into the show.
Let's keep this in the recording. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Alicia just said to me, I need you louder in my head. Like, she had to turn up her volume, and I'm like,
Turn it up.
that's something nobody has ever said to me before in my life. Could you be a little bit louder, Elizabeth? Oh, this is new for me. This is very exciting.
I love it. I love loud Elizabeth in my head.
Listen.
Straight talking.
Be careful
cackling.
what you wish for.
All right, we are informed today.
What are you wearing, girl? It looks pettable.
I am wearing a velour tracksuit, as one does.
And me, who hails from Staten Island, is like, what you got on? My radar. I'm like, ooh, what is that? It looks like I want to touch it. Of course, it's bold.
I'm very into velvet and velour right now, and to tracksuits.
Ma'am, my life is...
Right? Yeah,
Yes.
It's all got to be pettable.
Everything has to be pettable.
That's right.
And a tracksuit never goes out of style. I'm sorry. I don't care what the trends are.
That's right.
A tracksuit is always practical. So we wrapped up last time. We were saying we wanted to get into projection. Mm-hmm. And I remember, actually, I don't think I ever followed up, or we ever really got that much deeper into it, because I know at some point last year you were doing a human design course about projection, right?
Yes.
And so I know there's like projection as it relates to being someone like a 5/1 or like a 6/2 who have big projection fields. Right. So let's just geek out on all of it, but then there's also just like the force of projection that, yes, we all deal with it, and the fucking Insta therapy and TikTok psychology of it all really oversimplifies the concept. Yeah. So we have people out here all the time like, oh, you're projecting. It's like, maybe, but also you're still being a twat. Like
Totally. Absolutely. And I think there's a conflation between perception and projection.
Ooh, say more.
Well, I think that a lot of times what we experience or what we're labeling as projection is perception. Unclear perception, not necessarily like mature perception, right? So I think when perception's not clear, it carries projections. But when it's actually not a projection, it's perception. And I think the difference is, as a projection field, the difference between, for me, how I experience perception or projection is perception stays with that person's story in themselves about me, and projection is where they need like me to keep upholding that story for them. Right. So projection feels a lot more active and like obligatory. It feels like there's like they're giving me an obligation to perform their story of me and perform their expectation. And then when I don't, there's a punishment. There's versus just like my perception of like, or their perception of me being like, oh, I think she's this. Like, it's not that there's not projection in that, but it's more perception. Anyway, that's just how I experience it in myself.
No, I get what you're saying. And as you're saying it, I'm just feeling like the energy of actual, like, clear, accurate perception is quite neutral.
Right. You see
you're
what
literally
is.
You're just seeing what is.
Right.
Right. And of course, and that just means if you're able to clearly perceive something, you might be projecting, but the projection is aligned with the perception. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I think
Which
so.
makes, yeah, there's an overlap here. Like,
there's an overlap.
There is that quote that Anais Nin, the famous, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are.
As we are. Right.
So if we are as the thing is, we'll be able to see it more accurately.
And or if we are if we're seeing through our judgment of what something is or is not, right? How it's upholding our worldview or not, right? How, most people don't see. And I think that's where it becomes a projection, is that it's not just that I see with my judgment or I see with my assumption or I see with my want of you, but that then I need you to meet me in that. I need you to create
this is such a great distinction. And then like what we are able to perceive also has so much to do, you see a lot of things going around these days about like we're living in these like anti-intellectual times. Right. So the less context or experience that people have. So anyone that's going to be like super sheltered or closed-minded or, I'm going to say uneducated. I'm going to throw that in air quotes though, because not everyone is educated academically. Not everyone is educated through book, school, whatever. It's through lived experience. It's through the streets, as they say, or which can mean so many things, not the actual technical streets,
Uneducated times.
Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like if people have any kind of connection or relationship or context for something, we can perceive things clearly that we're not if we have enough familiarity and understanding of it. Yeah?
I think, yes, seeing clearly takes both familiarity and lack of need to make that something fit a particular need.
Yeah, right. We're not attached to it. It doesn't like I'm not personally hooked into this being a certain way or meaning a certain thing. Like,
yeah, but it really does take some experience or reference point.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I think so important.
Well, I was just going to say, because otherwise I think without a reference point, what happens, and I think this is where a lot of us get told we're projecting, we're actually intuiting something. Because without a clear reference point, but we've got that sensation that like something's not right, or they're not who they say they are, or this is not what it wants. Yeah. But I don't actually have that reference point to like lock that in to be clear perception. And so then what happens is that my clear knowing that this is not cool, that something's off, doesn't match my seeing. Right. And so in that place, then we go, oh, I must just be projecting. Or somebody says, well, I think you're just projecting that they're this, that, and the other. And you're like, oh, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I just don't like them or just whatever. And then it's like a diminishing of like what our knowing is. So I think the interesting thing about paying attention to like what's clear in us is that not all of our clears or our clairs can operate in the same way, or they need the same reference point, or they have the same timeline for like what that clear seeing, knowing, feeling kind of place would be, right? And so a lot of time with projection and perception is because it's looking at something, we're perceiving something, looking at something, engaging with something outside of ourselves. Right? And so that's like a different time frame of getting all those references, being able to understand things, to pinpoint things. And so I think that's why projection isn't always unhealthy.
No. And there's also positive projection. Like this is something I feel like I jokingly call this, like, this is something very cute about me. I positively project on people all the time. Like my own best qualities, I'm seeing them in others. It's like, every year on Valentine's Day, Miriam Hasna will post her thing that's like, when you're in love all this is actually you're loving yourself. You're seeing yourself reflected back through this person. Like it's impossible to love somebody else without loving yourself.
That's right.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's funny to me. Like, I'm sure I negatively project as well, but I've caused myself so much harm by making all these positive assumptions about people. And I'm like, that person's trash. Like, so, this is interesting. I'm just going to drop a story in and see where this takes us. I don't know if I've talked about this on the show before. I probably have told you the story, but last summer I had gone on a date with a dude who was in therapy. And this is becoming one of my least favorite genres of men, which is the good guys who are going to therapy. They're doing their work, but want instant cookies and flowers for doing it. It's like, bitch, you haven't integrated anything. You're not necessarily acting any better, except now you're just have another layer of entitlement
Right.
that you didn't have before, or another way of trying to like make yourself seem better compared to other men. And it's like, when the bar is subterranean, the fact that you're in the basement is not impressive, my guy. You're just doing what you should be motherfucking doing. So
you know
anyway,
what Chris
this
Rock
man
says about
was-
this?
What?
He says, you ain't getting no claps, you ain't getting no accolades for doing the shit you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, like, thank you, Chris Rock. I never knew he said that anywhere. But correct. And this man was all upset. He was like telling me about, women have all these, women always testing you. Like, you have to get on FaceTime or you have to, talk on the phone before you, and I'm like, clearly the therapy's not working.
Did you say that?
I called this dude up. Yeah, I was like, listen, I'm like, here's the thing. If you want someone to be able to immediately clock that you are who you think you are, and you don't want to deal with women's pasts, you're going to have to find someone who doesn't care and doesn't need safety or doesn't need whatever,
Right.
Or for whatever reason, instantly decides that you're safe, which, like, to be quite honest, I've done enough dating. There's so many energetic signatures. So, this is another reason why I'm bringing this in. Because we were talking about like the reference points and where we're perceiving from and where we're projecting from. And this is another part of having so much deep experience with people, whether it's personally, professionally, whatever, where it's like, at a certain point, there's energetic signatures, right? It's almost like catching the fragrance of something and being like, oh, somebody's baking bread.
Right.
And you know it's bread because you fucking know what bread smells like. Where, like with this guy, I'm like, oh, got it. I'm in therapy. I'm better than other men. Give me credit, treat me special, but I'm not actually doing much. Like, there's an energetic signature. There's like the who you think you are, who you want to be. And I think this is actually, thank you, now that I've talked myself in 37 directions. There's an interesting thing that I'm curious for how you might place it within this conversation of projection and perception, of when people perceive themselves to be a certain way and life is not meeting them like that. And therefore that is reflecting to them that they are not who they think they are.
That's usually a good place for them to check their projections.
This is what's happening, right?
Totally. Yeah, because in that situation, right, like that's the place where you realize like you've been projecting that everyone else is the problem. That everyone else is, this, that, and the other, right? Because you've got this story of yourself. You're perceiving yourself in this way. You've locked in this experience in a storied, controlled way, fixed way about who you are. And then none of the evidence really matches that. So then you have to move from projection about why nobody gets you or nobody likes you or this always is happening, right? Because and so then there's people, you're expecting them to now behave in this way to uphold your story of yourself, right? And so if they don't, then there's a secondary layer for the projection of like, well, it must be them.
listen, and the flip of this is actually what really helped me finally accept and move on from trying to repair anything further with my family.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you know what? When it comes to you guys, the common denominator is not me. Because I don't have experiences with any other people in my life that I have with you.
Right.
It's only people whose last name is D'Alto who I have these experiences with. This shit is not me.
I'm out.
I'm in deep relationship with so many people, and none of this stuff is happening over there.
You know, I think there's an interesting, so I think obviously the way we are processing things and like the conversation we're in is like not the Norway. Somebody's going to talk about projection of like, oh, you're projecting on me and it's this, you know. Anyway, what I want to say about that place of recognizing where we have been projecting, because it was safer to project, as you had called it before, positive projection, onto people, like an actual safety mechanism. So, you know, projection is often talked about as coping mechanism, self-defensiveness, you know, projecting your unconscious stuff on people. Totally. And also, we're complicating that, you know, in our own exploration here. I think a lot that happens when you are the psychedelic sheep in the family, when you are the awakened one, when you are the, you know, when you're the one who's doing some stuff, there's a way that you also project onto others that they're a little closer to where you are or where you need or want them to be. Mm-hmm. In order to not feel quite as different in your own self, but also to continue to have that perception of yourself that if you just did a little bit more, if you got a little bit more healthy, if you did a little bit more healing, if you could speak more clearly, if you could say the thing right, if you could do it, then they would get it. Then it would go easier, then it would go aspect, right? And so in that place where all of a sudden that projection starts to dissolve and you really have to go, wow, there's a chasm here. I can't keep projecting that we're as close. I can't keep projecting that you're going to get me. I can't keep projecting that thing onto you to maintain this relationship that also has the secondary effect of me needing to continue to be the one who does the healing. Me continue to be the one that upholds all the stuff. Me continue to be the one that is the problem. Ultimately, like, so most of us, not most of us, I can't say that. Quite a few of us, a lot of people that I hang out with, we were the problems. And then that is something that the gift and the wound of that did somehow spur some healing, did somehow spur us going on a quest to discover ourselves or to find something, right? That somehow those experiences and labels and troubles was a catalyst for change and for growth and for seeking and for learning and all of these things. But we still held on to the identity that was first formed, that we are the problem. That inherently whatever is wrong with us is also what disturbs the field and what creates the problems in the family and what creates the problems in the systems, in our jobs and relationships, all the things. And that when we finally get better, when we get good enough, when we get healed enough, then all of those things will fall away. Right. And so still in the parentified role of taking all of the responsibility. And I think what you're talking about, as you stop projecting that and stop perceiving yourself that way, all of a sudden you're left with this real question about what relational fields am I going to keep tending?
Mm-hmm. You know, and so this does relate. The day we're recording this in real time is February 20th. Yeah. And I sent out an email this morning that Elisha was talking to me about before we hit record, just about, you know, my experiences of the last like 15, 16 years in the self-help, personal development, spiritual healing, online entrepreneur, industrial complex. Right. Because a woman, at least who I'm acquainted with, I had met her before, published a big, honestly, she framed it as whistleblowing. And, you know, it was a whistleblowing shocking article. Huh?
There was no whistles going off for me.
There was no whistles. It wasn't, I like calling things a hit piece because that is always a funny term to me. But she was confessing, you know, and it also in a lot of ways felt like she was trying to distance herself from the very things that she's participated in. And if perhaps not, maybe try to control the narrative and before it gets to her, who knows? But either way, none of this shit was surprising. A lot of it is people I've known or met or been 1 degree of separation from, and like been knowing that these people are not who they project. So there's all of that. It's such a great field for like the parasocial relationships, that kind of projection, the assumptions around money and who makes what and how things work. There's so many details that we fill in when we don't actually know.
Right.
But what's interesting to me too, and I don't know if there's a term for this, but people's degree of willingness to just believe their assumptions. What's that? to just be like,
Most
yeah, I'm
people
right.
call it their logic. That's
I know
most
what I'm
people call
talking
it.
about.
That's right.
Like a totally like unrelated, an extreme example, what always cracks me up, and I'll use Bad Bunny as an example here, because recent footage would indicate that he might be back together with his ex-girlfriend, Gabriella. The way people on the internet act like they know this man's life, they know this woman, they're
Right.
meant for each other, this or that. He's always missed her. Yeah, we don't know. I love when people do that with celebrities. Like, I guess Ben Affleck and Jennifer Aniston were spotted somewhere together recently being all touchy-feely, and people are like, they're back, baby. They've always been in love with each other. It's like, we don't know shit. Like, we don't know if it's a public, like, who knows? But what makes people so willing to be like, oh yeah, I know, when there's no fucking way they could possibly know?
Yeah.
What's that?
I have no. I mean, the delusion of the average,
foolishness?
right?
Idiocy?
Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, from being a child who had to begin to sort who was lying because they were actively lying and who was lying because they just didn't bother to figure anything out and they're just saying shit. I mean, that's kind of like.
Category number 2 is my dad.
Was like every teacher
bad.
of mine. Yeah.
Oh,
every teacher of
God.
mine, I'd be like, what the
They just say things and you're
They
like,
just say shit and they're not operating. And that people so like that they like whatever story that they've decided about themselves for whatever fucking reason, and they just keep saying it and they never get curious and they never question it. And they're never like,
No
why do I keep saying this
curiosity.
thing? Why? I mean, I hear myself say something about myself and I go, what are you talking about, Elisha? Is that true? Where's that coming from? Like, I have curiosity about the shit that comes out of my mouth. And it doesn't stop my mouth from running all of the time. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're not even curious about what you're talking about and why you said that. I wrote, so how I spent my week. I have no lectures to give on semiotics anytime soon. I wrote a lecture on semiotics this week. Talking about this thing of the signified and signifier, like what are the meaning making aspect, right? Do you know what symbols you've attached to what meanings to, right? And do you understand what you're actually talking about? What is the subtext of that? There's something that fascinates the fuck out of me, that people are talking, they do not understand the subtext, they don't understand the meanings that they are attributing, that they are upholding, that they are perpetuating about things, right? And that's why we don't ask the right questions. That's why we never go back to choice point. That's why we just are like stumbling around out here making things so chaotic. Like, life is chaotic enough. You do not need to add to that by never actually having an ability to perceive your own thoughts and understand what the fuck you're talking about. And I think in a way, like the kind of the humdrum like haze that comes from like celebrity culture and like, you know, the Real Housewives and all of this kind of this way that in culturally that we're like just spelling ourselves into this ridiculous sort of zombiness about what the fuck are we talking? Like, what is it? What are we doing? What the fuck are we doing?
You know, many years ago, one of the ways I started seeing how this positive projection thing was working in me and harming me, I had to really anchor myself into this does not equal that.
Right.
because where I was giving people unearned benefits of the doubt was because they would exhibit a behavior I associated with some quality or ability or skill, like emotional intelligence or emotional maturity or whatever. But it's like that saying that even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Totally.
It's like that. You know? And my mom is such a good example. Oh, sorry. My mom worked in HR for 40, 45 years, whatever. My mom took and facilitated emotional intelligence seminars, right? So it's like, I know, you know what this stuff is.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that's what's happening between us.
Right.
And often where my assumptions or positive projections would also come from is the like, you should know this. Like, you know, when you're sitting with someone, like, it's actually quite alarming that you don't know this. What the fuck? Like,
yeah.
So just having to just engage so much more, and also as an intuitive person, right? And we've talked about this before. There's what's actually being shared and said. There's what I'm picking up on that's not explicitly. So like, there's so many layers.
There's so many layers. And then, you know, just to bring in how our safety cues are going to be operating in this, a lot of the times, again, whether it's positive or negative, so much of our projections are going to be coming from, how do I make myself safe enough?
Yeah.
Right. And so then a lot of it, it's like the most unsafe projections for me are receiving other people's active fawning. When someone is in that place of wanting to use the kind of the rhetoric around it, which is exactly how I see it, but I'll just, for a shortcut, say it is like, you know, give their power away or want me to hold their power, right? Like that to me is like, that is the most unsafe place. Now that person's not kind of actively thinking like, oh, I hope Elisha holds my power. What they want is for me to have an answer for them or to fix something for them or to show up as a savior in a certain way, right? But what that feels like in my system is like alarm bells, right? And so then if I'm not clear in that, if I don't understand how I operate, then I would project onto them, oh my God, that friend is so needy. They want so much from me. They're so this, that, and the other, right? And they would project onto me. Well, they've already projected the fixer idea onto me, right? And then they might project, well, she's so mean and she's just so cold, right? We're both just operating from our projections rather than dropping lower and being like, what's actually going on here is like a mismatch in safety cues. They feel safest trying to approach someone and making themselves less than, you know, needing someone else to be, you know, a hierarchy with them. I feel really unsafe in that place. And so actually there's a mismatch of our safety cues. And that's what's happening in the relational field. And you can't really, if you're just going to operate from projections, you're never going to get that. And you're going to have to go towards people or away from people, you know, based on the story of it, and versus like actually understanding what's happening in your system, which can mean you can say to someone, hey, this is what it's feeling like for me. This is what I'm experiencing and how you're perceiving me and how you're projecting onto me. Can we clean this up?
Yeah. The conversation of, I'm not intimidating, you're intimidated. Where does that fit into? What are you laughing at?
Because I am both intimidating and you are intimidated. I think it's a better way to say it. I mean,
I think things are true.
I think both things are true. So, and I think both things are not true, right? And I think what matters is being, again, curious and interrogative in the moment about what's really happening. So there are so many places that I think that we want other people to be responsible for our own experience, right? So you're intimidating me. You've hurt my feelings. Right? And then there's so many places on the other side where like we actually haven't acted something against some, like I did strike out to hurt your feelings. I did, right? So I don't think that it's necessarily one or the other. I think quite often, especially in the mess of a relational field, it's a little bit of a both and. I can definitely take a posture of intimidation. And if you cross my boundaries, if you come at me, my shadow warrior, my like rebel self will absolutely take a posture of back up, bitch. I'll take you down. Like I can be intimidating. Yeah. Right? That's generally not when people call me intimidating, but I do know that about myself. Generally, when I get called intimidating, it would be when I'm just moving in the flow of myself, when I have just like shown up in something. And that's where I think it does have an aspect of like, when the projection is that, then I'm like, oh, what you're perceiving is what scares you about power, what scares you about confidence, what scares you about someone who can use their voice, what scares you about whatever, right? What scares you about a mixed race person, right? Like, and that technically is not mine to hold for you. Right?
No.
So I think it
no.
takes being in a little bit deeper conversation. I can be intimidating. I could sometimes be that purposefully. I'm not generally that way when you're going to be projecting it on me, though.
Yeah. You know, one of my big barometers for who I can actually be close to in any context has become they're literally never intimidated by me.
Yeah.
They're just like, yes, like right on. And more, even more than that, they are so relieved to be in my presence. Because, and that usually comes from fellow people who constantly get called intimidating.
Right.
Because it's like, great, we could be non-intimidating together. Like, because ultimately the root of it, and this is only in my experience, but what you're referring to is what people are finding intimidating is that I'm just very comfortable in myself. I don't mind owning mistakes. I don't mind being wrong. Like, I personally am not afraid of the great majority of things other people are afraid of.
Right.
Because I'm very comfortable in conflict, taking responsibility, having hard conversations, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's something that's interesting, and I've talked about this with some other friends, where because people are intimidated, even though you would have the hard conversation, you would be compassionate, whatever, people won't bring it to you.
Right.
Because they're afraid.
Yeah, but
I've had experiences. That's them, right? Because what I have found often is people don't want to confront me if they don't want to actually engage with the truth. And this is exactly rooted in this conversation. If they want to engage with the story they're trying to uphold, they're not going to want to confront me because they know damn well I'm not going to be down with the fucking story. I'm going to be down with what's actually happening here.
Right.
What's real for you? What's real for me? Where might we be projecting or misperceiving each other? And then like, what's the real? And like, because I'm perfectly comfortable landing in the place of being like, cool, we don't vibe on this.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Most people aren't, or I won't. Let's not say most, like you did earlier. A lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
And it's so, what I find about this is so interesting. But again, it comes back to that point how like other people who are like pretty well inhabited in themselves and like open and comfortable relationally and not afraid of dealing with the hard stuff, these are typically the folks who others will find intimidating.
Absolutely. And for
your
me,
comfort
I think
really
it's all
makes other
fawning.
people.
I think it comes down really big to fawning, because when you do not need to operate in active fawning as a way to create relationship, it confuses the people who do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And you know, that's actually so painful to realize that
For
people
both
weren't genuinely connecting with you. They were fawning.
yes. Yes.
Because you're like, damn,
and
I
as
thought we were having a
5 and
real
a 2,
connection.
even more like that they didn't even bother to get to know me before they decided who I was. And then, what I really like, the alarm bells that I have around fawning have not been helpful in like social situations. And yet I'm so grateful that it's a fine hair trigger in my system, because it really has kept me from investing in relationships where I was never going to be seen as a whole person. I was going to be dehumanized
Totally.
the entire time and fawned at. And I think the thing that an active fawner has a lot of trouble kind of hearing is that that's manipulation of me. It's not cognitive manipulation, but you absolutely are. You have contorted yourself to behave in a way that you think is going to please me so that I then please you. And that feels like fucking shit to me. That is the worst relational field for me. Like, I hate it. Ugh.
And it's a non-starter for me, because the minute I feel that, it actually takes me out of what my genuine response to you would have been, because now I'm responding to that and I'm allergic.
Totally. Now I have to be intimidating because I need you to back up.
Now I'm in protection mode. whatever that's going to look like.
Right.
Maybe, and as I get older, I'm getting more to become a person who just won't say anything.
Yeah.
Will just remove my,
Doesn't
will just
need
be like,
totally.
bless,
Totally.
have fun with that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying okay, have fun with that. Like, I'm not, the fakeness, the whatever. I've always been kind of allergic to that.
Yeah.
But still had to work out like the internalized programming for women of like, well, why am I disagreeable? Why am I whatever? And I'm like,
Giselle.
because y'all are lying.
I know.
Because I can't force myself to participate in your lies.
Or you just like, yeah. And even when you're not lying, no one was curious. No one interrogated. Everybody just went right. So, you know what? I'm going to go left just to be like, let's at least interrogate the other side, guys. Also, I'm a Gemini. Yeah, it doesn't help. Hey, I want to go back to that place where I'm not intimidating. You're intimidated.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it kind of on the personal level. And here's what I want to say is like a translation of that I see or I've experienced and hear a lot about in like coaching, teaching, mentorship kind of ways, where then that gets translated into like, so I'm the leader and, you know, you kind of say something and I go, that's your medicine and I'm here to trigger you. And it's and you need to take your medicine and that's a mirror for you. And I think that's where it gets to be like, no, we're not doing that. That is not okay. And that level then of actually for me, what I see in those leaders is they want you to project on them and they want you to project how amazing they are and how they've got it all together and, you know, how they're not what they are that, you know, is happening. And I think that place then of like a leader not actually being able to be in that like responsibility of like, oh, if something's happened in this space that needs to get tended, that needs to get repaired, that needs to get, again, curiosity, that needs to get unpacked, that needs to get kind of aspect and sort of this idea of like, because I'm the leader, because I'm the teacher, because I'm the what, I get to be mean. I get to just say whatever the fuck I want, you know, and not have to take responsibility for it. And if I trigger you, that's yours. I'm not wrong. You're just triggered.
Well, and so this is the same conversation as how impact versus intent gets A, misunderstood, B, weaponized.
Yeah.
Right? Because even the conversations around impact matters more than intent. Not always. No, sometimes the intention actually really, really matters. And we need to look at it because we need to look at, well, if this was my intent and that's how that landed, where was the breakdown?
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
I might have some responsibility here.
I think most of us neurodivergents get that a lot. We're like, whoa, okay, wait. That was not my intent.
Girl, this is so true. I've been spending more time on Threads lately, and you know, there's some really great ADHD and neurodivergent ones. And one of the things, which again, like sometimes though the sweeping generalizations, I'm like, I don't know that that's always true. But I saw one recently that was about how like neurodivergent people, you know, ADHD or autistic specifically, communicate or over communicate context far more, context or subtext, than neurotypicals. So it was like neurotypical people don't say what they mean and they want you to understand them somehow.
Right.
Neurodivergent, which by the way, I also have gotten this from Threads. I saw someone call it neurodivine, and I think I'm going to take that up. I love it so much.
Oh, so good.
I also saw some people talking about how neurospicy is offensive, and I'm like, okay. I didn't even go down that thread because I was like, I can't with the words. Sometimes it's too much.
Yeah,
but
totally.
The aspect that we're like over commuting, over articulating, neurotypicals are under communicating, under articulating. And it's like, it actually doesn't matter because do we understand each other or not? Like, because, you know, there's always, it feels like often there are these like subtle bids to create superiority. And it's like, nothing is better.
No.
But it's all ineffective if we're not fucking being honest about it.
Totally. And even within relationship with neurodivergent. So Megan and I communicating, which, you know, both our own version of divergency. And I'm just like, okay, Captain Obvious, I got it. She's like, well, I'm just saying. I'm like, okay. Right. So
well, I'm like, this is how you know you're with your friend. You could actually roast each other, you know? Like even my mom with the detail thing when I'm like, girl, fast forward me the end. My brain is melting. And she's like, okay. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. I'm like, did you want me to fill the blanks in for you? I could just I often will have say to people, tell me the end first, and I'll tell you if I need to know anything else. Just tell me the end.
1,000%.
And I'll ask you any
questions if I have them.
Which, again, your friends get you and they're like, okay. And then other people can be like, that is so rude. I'm like, I know,
time. Especially people who like really want to like hold you hostage telling you the story.
And also if it's a neurotypical story where we're like, actually, you're not telling me the story. So I'm still going to I'm going to spend all this time listening to you and still going to have to figure out what we're talking about. Let's just get to the end. Just get to the end.
Badly tell me a story. I understand. I could finish the story for you. I know. So I'm sitting through this. I'm torturing myself. Only to need more information. Like, totally. Help me.
I know. My siblings are like, you're so rude. I'm like, okay.
I can't. Like, who has time anymore? And listen, bless perimenopause, because it's like, whenever it was about a year ago, I think, because if I was in a hotel, I was not yet, so it was probably February or March last year. I didn't move into my place yet when you and I had our conversation with Rebecca, and I still wasn't like fully in perimenopause. I'm like, all right, but what was also happening is as you all were talking about different aspects, I'm like, oh no, I've definitely, but again, this is why we need to talk to other people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you're the youngest of us, so you were just,
I'm not sure. I was catching up, but
coming on.
Now that I am, I'm really understanding the absolute lack of energy for entertaining things that we used to at least have a little bit of a tolerance for.
No.
It's like,
no.
So that's why I'm just like, I love now, whether it's projection, perception, whatever. If someone's coming at me with something that I'm like, no, this is not for me.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable just being like, cool. Like
yeah.
And I feel like there's a healing. You and I have also we've touched on before, how there are some people out here who say that any neurodivergence is actually trauma, and therefore any neurodivergence could be healed. Now, is there certainly a correlation and overlap? Like when my nervous system is more regulated, is my ADHD more manageable? 100%. That is true for me. I'm not saying it's true for everybody else. I'm saying for me.
I guess what I would challenge in that language is that our adaptability is always shifting based on our regulatory resources. Amen. And what you may track in your adaptability are things that you might label or experience as ADHD. I don't know that actually when we understand more that would be technically true.
Okay,
right?
So
because
this is another really important piece.
I think that, again, because neurodivergency is positioned as the opposite of neurotypical, like, right, we have this thing, you're like this camp or this camp, right? But the thing is that what all systems have is adaptability. Mm-hmm. And our adaptability absolutely is affected by what our resourcing and what our regulation, if we understand anything about what that term actually means, regulation is how you're operating with availability to resource.
Yeah.
Right.
So would it be better to say what I said earlier as I notice a correlation between when my nervous system is more regulated, my ADHD is more manageable?
I think you can totally look at it that way, right? And I think for the layperson, that is a fine way to reference to yourself. As a person who sort of sits a little bit more in the other camp, that's not exactly how I would see it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with recognizing at any point, however we relate to our adaptability, whether it's in their divergency, ADHD, whether it's in yelling at our kids, like however you're experiencing it, when you feel more regulated, that stuff is easier to manage, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got more resourcing. So if you think about regulation, the simplest definition would be, how much availability to choice do I have?
Yep. Yep.
Right? When the less availability to choice you have, the more autonomic or habitualized you become.
Yep. Yep. So also, it sounds like it's important to note that there's no level of regulation that's going to be like, you don't have ADHD anymore.
Correct.
Right, that's the part. That's like the danger in it. It's like, because again, this is what we do. And this is also how a lot of these industries are built. And these frameworks are set up to be like, everything is on the responsibility of the person experiencing it.
Yes. The truth is, we really don't know what ADHD is. We really don't actually know what neurodivergency is. We're just at the cusp of being able to unlock and study and listen and learn. We just had publishing of the first round of studies that looked at ADHD and some other diagnosable, not diagnosable, that's the wrong way to say it, diagnoses of neurodivergence, not from their opposition and what we've currently called neurotypical. So the first time that studies have been done just to say, hey, what does this system that we're identifying as this, what does it do? Not as in like, how does it not operate like that? But like, just what do you do? We're just starting that work.
Which is, well,
we
I'm
don't know
so
anything.
glad to hear this.
We don't know anything. Right. So also, that's what I say about our labels and all those things. If it helps you to know yourself in a way that you're like, I can support myself better. That's even how I feel about the human design and the projection and all the things. If it's something that helps me understand how I'm operating, how I get to make myself safe enough to be here, how I get to, tend the relational field, like fan-fucking-tastic. If it now becomes something that has to be upheld as a diagnosis, where that means that I have to hold a label or I am limited or all those things, then hell no, I'm not participating. What we have to understand is divergency typically means more adaptability or less adaptability. That's where we're looking at divergency. But what was the typical adaptability that we were operating from? At the simplest way, a white man colonizing system. That's what we've called typical. So business as fucking usual is not necessarily, like, that's not a good standard. A white body that is the most colonized body that then continues to enact that colonization, and we can set that as the standard of norm, and then everything that doesn't operate from that is weird, alternative, divergent, a problem. No. We have to go back to the beginning. We have to dismantle what we've called typical, normal, standard, any of that. All of that has to go.
Deal with the tantrums of all the people who get to no longer be typical and standard.
That's right. And that's the thing. So you want to tell me that your masked politeness is the typical that I should be? Fuck that. You want to tell me that, all these things, all this stuff. So not just the systems that are burning everyone. It is the theories that have underpinned these systems that are not built for anything other than the colonizing body. That's not normal. That's not the norm we're going for.
And there also isn't normal. So this is something I've been saying for such a long time. Like, I would love to find for this spectrum to be more defined and precise where possible, right? Because even to lump it in, right? Like, because I've seen, sometimes when we say neurodivergent, I mean, neurodivergent includes everything up to and including of some, like Tourette's, for example, OCD, for example, things that are quite a bit more debilitating for some people than, say, how my ADHD functions for me.
Correct.
Right? Some people are nonverbal on the autistic spectrum, and that's also neurodivergent, right? So there's all kinds of, like, to even just blanket neurodivergent, while we're trying to be inclusive, we're not being specific, which in and of itself can be exclusive. Right. But we just don't have better or precise language.
We don't have a vocabulary
we've been talking about. We really don't. And same with like ADHD, because that's such a misnomer, especially for anyone who isn't presenting as like hyperactive.
Well, one of the ways we got to the language of neurodivergent in this kind of casserole pot that we have right now was starting with beginning to shift from, understanding autism has a spectrum. And the language very much around that was like, you're on the spectrum. And so that began to open things up a little bit. And then it began to see like things that people would go like, well, so this is something, is it on that spectrum? It's like, well, we can't quite find it on that spectrum, but it's got to be on some spectrum. So this is absolutely crumbling that. This bend towards many of us self-identifying, many of us haven't gone any formal route to need to take test or be diagnosed. And again, if that is something that would help you get resourcing, then I totally support it. But for most of us, my excessive adaptability in most ways, and the few places that I have rigid adaptability are well within my current framework and my resourcing and my support to be able to work with. That is not true of everyone. So again, that's one of the things I love about opening up this neurodivergency is then it becomes actually like, let's deal with the system in front of us. Let's deal with this person. Let's support people and not support diagnoses, not support pathologizing, not support the need to put everything into some type of formatting. So I really think that the most holistic way for society to move forward is to keep, for now, if we need to have pots, okay, but it's like inside this pot, understanding that it is still all this, everything's a spectrum. Everything's a spectrum. And you don't have to fit yourself into a box. And definitely when you're dealing with the medical system, keep advocating for yourself to be met and listened to and what's actually happening to your system.
When people want to be like, oh, well, you don't have a diagnosis. Like, it's like, do you know what it takes?
I have my lived experience, bitch.
To even engage with the medical system, though, to get that diagnosis?
Right.
Do you know what it would require some people to put themselves through to get someone to sign off on what they know is true?
Yeah.
When they're not seeking to get the resource for help from that system anyway.
It's still being weaponized. It's still being weaponized. Against you. It's still being weaponized against you. And it's still, for many of us, like, well, I don't need to. So, no. And again, what is your relationship with Western medicine that if do you need it or do you, like, I don't need a Western medical doctor to tell me about my lived experience.
1,000%.
I just don't. I need them to write me a prescription when I have a need for a prescription, right? Like that's kind of my engagement with Western medicine is like, I am not your lab rat, but I will use you if I need to. So I'm not interested in engaging in it in a way that I believe that my well-being or health is actually available inside of that system.
So back to projection. I mean, this felt connected and related because how we see and how we perceive, all these things are interwoven.
Yeah.
So if there's any kind of like consideration for folks who want to walk away from this and be like, oh, I listened to this episode today and I'm going to engage with projection differently. How might we want to even invite or encourage people to do that in a way that honors wherever they are right now?
So with our audience and the peeps that, find resonance with us, I would be so less concerned about what you're projecting out in the world. My biggest concern is what you've taken on in projections. So what I would say is like, let's unpack your identities, your stories about yourself, your have-tos, your shoulds, and let's get curious about, did that come from you taking on someone else's projection or perception of you? And does it need to be true? Can you let it go? And so example of that, again, is going back to being the troublemaker, the one who's wrong, the one who doesn't know everything, who's causing problems because they know things, right? I think that is a lot of the people that we hang out with have had those experiences and that we've taken on in different ways. What does that mean then if I'm the one who's causing the trouble because I know truth? What does it mean then if I'm the one who's causing trouble because I can't participate and uphold these rules? And how have we contorted and taken on those projections in a way that we're actually operating outside of ourselves to try and fix that for everyone else while it's continuing to abandon ourselves?
And why are you more concerned for the types of people that would be listening to this and resonating with us? Why are you more concerned about
I think
receiving projection than doing the projecting?
I think that any projections that the person like us is putting out there is usually still trying to fix the problem and not create the problem. And so we may not always be seeing everyone clearly, but I think again we're over adaptive and bending over backwards to hold the field. We're over adaptive
Over-functioning,
and
overcompensating.
and taking responsibility and all of those things. So I think that it's I think our work is not just to sort of be like, I can see that person clearly. And just to reference like the letter thing that you sent out and what's going on. Again, I would say most of our audience is going to look at least one or two of those names on a list like that and be like, oh, I liked their message for a while, but I really knew something was off. Right. But I didn't say anything, or I still went to that yoga journal conference with that person because they were the person who was doing the thing I was trying to learn to do, or they were the one who was touted as the expert. So I think, again, a lot of the places where we're sort of projecting, but we don't actually like ever say it. And that usually in that place is like, it's because there wasn't enough support for us to see clearly, or enough ways that we could actually articulate what we knew was true. And so it did come out as a projection, but it wasn't because we were necessarily off base. It was just because we didn't know how to relate fully. And we are so terrified of being too weird, called the crazy ones. And so we stay in our insular little groups because we've made ourselves safe in our things. And actually, the world could, when you're asking like, why do people do that in terms of the star culture and all these things? And I think part of it is like, if there were more of us weirdos, who, people were listening to rather than the people talking about Bad Bunny's girlfriend, the world would be a better place. So even though we may still have work to do on our own projections, I think we are actually wiser. And that if we could let go of the projections that were blocking us from seeing ourselves more fully, I think we could do some even more good than we were already doing.
Well, this was
What about you? You got anything?
What was the question?
What would you want someone to take away from our conversation of projection?
I got so into what you said. I was like,
thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I love and think that this might not necessarily be directly related to projection, but I love whenever you bring up that if something helps you, use it.
Yeah.
Use it. And my thing is always also, and if something doesn't, leave it alone. It's not for you.
Yeah.
Let things not be for you. Like even over the years, I geek out so much about like human design and this and that and the Gene Keys. And I've had plenty of people, I'm sure you have too, be like, it's like reading a foreign language to me. I just can't get into it. I'm like, great, then it's not for you.
No problem.
No problem. It's not for you.
Yeah.
For example, like deep, like academic, like historical research based, it's not for me.
Right.
There's so many books I wish I could get into and read that I'm like, as soon as I get into, I'm like, no, it's just too many fucking details for me. I don't need all of this.
Get to the end.
Kill me. Yeah. What's the essence of this message? Thank you so much.
Right.
And I think there's that part, right? Which
Right.
I feel like also connects to what you were saying, because ultimately it comes to being able to like be present with yourself, locate what season, what cycle, what moment are you in? What do you need right now? Like, where are you on your own spectrum of your own fucking life?
Right.
And like to be as rooted and grounded and centered as aware as you can be, but then, be willing to correct course.
Absolutely.
There's so much we can't control.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the projections that we often put onto people could be where our fear of letting ourselves be on a journey. Right. So if we see a leader or we see a teacher who's still in process of growing and learning, rather than like being really clear and that person also being really clear, this is where I am on my journey. This is what I have to offer. Right. And like letting that be okay. When someone postures or we project that they're further along and then that crumbles, I think that is a huge problem. But I think that also then for a lot of us who are like, I need to get on my journey, but like, I don't know everything yet, prevents you from like just starting from where you are. Just like start creating your life from where you are.
You know what this feels connected to? So in that article, the person did bring up, my beloved Carolyn Mace.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I've heard unpleasant things about her before. I've really just have, like even as much as like being a curmudgeon is kind of like her persona, she actually is one. I have heard she's like not the nicest person to be around. Like she can snap, she can be super snarky, right? And essentially that's what they said in the article. Like that was the only reference to her, which I'm like, not defending her because I appreciate her shit, but also on the spectrum of things here, having a fucking temper is kind of the least of a lot of our worries, but sure.
I've always appreciated that she was quite clearly just her.
This is the reason I bring it up is because what you just said, when there is such a projection field, people participate in creating that. Because they put themselves out in the way that they want to be perceived. So then people participate in that.
Yeah.
And then when that crumbles, people are upset. Because with Carolyn Mace, she's, at no point have I ever had any impression from her that she thinks she's not that person.
She would be polite.
I think she's pretty open about that is not how she is. But again, whatever. I'm sure I have a little blind spot because I love Carolyn Mace.
Yeah.
As far as I've heard, she hasn't fucked any children. So I guess I could still read her books. Should we just stop recording the podcast now? How's that for a wrap up?
I think that's a good wrap up. I think the biggest thing to recognize is I was joking about this again this week, that one of the things I've wanted to do is to write like a manual for hiring someone, like, or joining somebody's program. And so what I would just say is, for those of us, like, if you're joining something, if you're listening to something, like, don't fall for other people's projections either, right? Like, don't just follow what someone's putting out there. Listen fully, feel fully. I was gonna say it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear to me. I think a lot of times, and I've had a lot of people who've listened to this show be like, one of the reasons I listen to your show is because I have a very low bullshit meter, or very high bullshit meter. Anyway, they can detect bullshit. And I think, just pay attention. Just pay attention.
Pay attention, y'all.
Just pay attention. Down with the gurus. Down with this idea that, somebody's going to give you the 12 steps to make you enlightened. And I personally don't think we need to be shocked anymore by gurus, self-appointed, publishing companied, Oprah certified, falling from grace. Like, it's just not shocking to me. And I think that we have a lot better thing to do with our time. The other thing I would say, and I think this is really where like the can come in to be a little burr for some people, is you need to stop fucking reading all the books and you need to do the fucking work.
Please.
So a lot of these people wouldn't be pedestalized if we weren't so obsessed with consuming information rather than going on the transformational initiatory journeys ourselves.
That's where we should end the conversation.
So we'll stop.
Bye, everyone.
Who knows where we're going next?
Like, subscribe, and share. Bye.